These are your options. Dried parsley. Reddit commenters who know it all. Too many onions in the sauce.
Okay.
Which do you kiss? Which do you marry? Which do you kill?
I'm telling you, there's a lot of good information on Reddit, but there is an epidemic of know-it-alls on that platform. Welcome back to the Sip and Feast podcast. Today we're going to talk about condiments and specifically how they can improve your meals. We're going to talk about ones that we use all the time that we think are indispensable in our kitchen. So Tara, I think this is a great one. Did you come up with this idea or did I?
I think you did.
Of course I did. I think now we're all cooking a little bit more this time of year. It's starting to get a little cool out. Kids are going right back to school now. This is being filmed right one day before our kids return to school. And we're kind of stocking up on stuff. We're getting ready for the bigger meals that can be given to our kids for lunch, meals that if you're making a lot and maybe you take to lunch for work, stuff like that. I think that for whatever reason, we all as a culture, especially in America, start cooking more when it gets a little cool out and the summer's over. Do you agree with that, Tara?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's normal. Your appetite increases more when the weather changes. Even though the weather hasn't changed here, it's like 90 degrees out, you can still kind of feel the changes in the air, and you want to start having those heartier meals.
And also, I think it's that you're wearing a little bulkier clothing right now, so you're maybe not as worried about how you look. Like you're not going to the beach and stuff. You're laughing, right? But it's not.
No, I think that's true.
I think it's kind of true.
Yeah. I think people definitely are more aware of how your body is when you're wearing less clothing, which is in the summer. You're wearing bathing suits, shorts, maybe smaller tops. I don't know.
I mean, I like to eat all the time, but I'm going to go with what Tara's saying. I think you're probably in that boat too. So we're not talking about fattening foods specifically today, but we're talking just more about food and the condiments we use for that food to make it better. So this isn't a top five. We probably have more than five.
Yeah, we have more than five. And what we're not going to talk about right now is we're not including like ketchup, mustard. It's more Italian American focused.
But these are Italian ingredients that we're speaking about. Mm-hmm. None of these are Italian American per se. Most of these ingredients come from Italy. They're imported, and though there are some American brands that do make these as well, names will be a little different depending on in Italy versus here. Rest assured, all these ingredients are used in Italy. Now, they might not be used in the same way that a typical Americans or just Italian people here, they use the ingredients different. So we're going to talk about what people here in America do because we live here in America. We don't live in Europe. We don't live in any other country. And that's really what we try to do here. We tell you how we do things here. And we also try to give you a clue and information about how other people who live here do things.
I mean, this is the only region we're truly experts on.
Yeah.
Is where we live.
So we're going to get into the first one right now. What do you have, Tara?
I kind of broke these out into two categories. I've got store-bought condiments, which some of the ones on this list you could certainly make homemade, but when we use them, we're using store-bought. And then the second would be homemade condiments, things that you can make in your own kitchen. So we'll start with a store-bought condiment, which is cherry peppers.
Cherry peppers.
Your favorite.
Yeah, cherry peppers are my favorite. I've been using them forever. And before we even discuss the use of them since you've known me for 4 years if you've been watching our YouTube channel from the beginning. And you could go back that far and you'll see me using them, but I've been using them realistically for my whole life. I mean, I was probably 3 years old when I ate my first one. And they were always very much, I would say, a New York-centric thing and New Jersey. Here, way before in popularity, before Calabrian chilies ever came on the scene. You know, Calabrian chilies obviously have been in Calabria, and they've been using them forever in Italy, but they were not a thing here in America up until about 10 years ago. And we'll speak about those later because those are great. But cherry peppers, now you can grow them in your garden. They're a little round pepper, and I'm sorry, I don't know the genus, like the species of pepper right now. Tara will look it up as we're discussing this. But you can use them right off the vine, but they're almost always sold in vinegar. So people will call them vinegar peppers. And you might be familiar with Sopranos, and Sopranos has a lot of great food. Sopranos represents Italian American food better than anything, better than Goodfellas, better than anything, because they had about 7 seasons to do it. What is it, Tara?
Cherry peppers, also known as pimiento, species is Capsicum annum.
Okay.
Some Latin for you from someone who does not speak Latin.
Anyway, back to the Sopranos. They were in multiple episodes, but one of the most famous ones was Vito, when he made pork with vinegar peppers, and in the show they refer to them as vinegar peppers. Most people will call them cherry peppers here. You might disagree with me and say, "Oh, my nonna always called them vinegar peppers." But anyway, in the show, it was Vito was making it for his secret boyfriend. You remember that, Tara?
Yeah, that was the Live Free or Die episode that took place in New Hampshire. Johnny Cakes was
Johnny Cakes. That's
what
right.
That's what he called him.
He made him his famous pork chops with vinegar peppers. That was one of the first recipes that I put out on the channel. Maybe like one of the first 30 recipes. Great use of them, but not the only use. By no means the only use. So these peppers are very, very, very frequently found in different types of sausage dishes. So sausage with broccoli rabe, cherry peppers almost always go in that dish. You can go to a huge swath of Italian restaurants here in New Jersey, and you'll see them in dishes. Some of them won't use broccoli rabe. A few of them might use like broccolini for the dish, but almost universally it's broccoli rabe. Mm-hmm. That dish is the Italian-American interpretation.
I'll read what you wrote. The Americanized version takes its cue from the Apulian dish orecchiette con cime di rapa.
Nobody will make it how it's probably made in Italy, but that's what makes this type of food great, is all the different interpretations of it. So cherry peppers get in there. They also are frequently found in deli cases, stuffed. And they're often stuffed with a breadcrumb mixture, or they're stuffed with like ham and provolone.
But once they become stuffed, they're not a condiment.
They're not a condiment. That's true.
The definition of condiment is that it's usually something you wouldn't eat by itself. Like, you're not going to sit there and spoon ketchup into your mouth.
You're right.
Let's keep it to condiments.
And Tara's right, and she brought me square back to center again. So we'll stay on condiments. I actually made a condiment. It's a recipe that is on our site. It is a cherry pepper spread. So what I did was I cooked them, cherry peppers, with a bunch of cherry tomatoes. And Tara, you know this dish because this was one of the dishes that I made for you a long time ago and you absolutely loved, right?
That's right. You used to make it all the time. When I used to work in the city, I would get home very late and you would make dinner, and often you'd have like the cherry pepper spread waiting for me when I got home. So I had like a little something to snack on while you prepared the larger meal. Didn't we do a Valentine's Day Patreon episode where you made the cherry pepper spread?
There's a video of it on Patreon. So yeah.
That's when we made Negronis too.
Yeah, it was a Negroni.
A non-alcoholic one and a regular one, right?
Can't even remember. Yeah. There's so many videos I've made. So yeah, that's another use. Thank you, Tara. Mm-hmm. That's another use of cherry peppers. A couple other uses. They will often find their way on heroes, on your standard Italian hero. The standard hero will have a bunch of different cured meats. Some of them will be pepperoni, salami, sometimes mortadella. You'll have provolone, lettuce, tomato, oil, and vinegar. No mayo, no mustard, ever. I'm serious about that. We got so many comments on the video about that. Oh, they're saying how I ruined it there, and I ruined it because I didn't toast it. I'm like, this isn't Quiznos, like, it's ridiculous. By the way, I think Quiznos went out of business. It shows you how smart of a move that was. I digress. Cherry peppers go on the sandwich. Don't confuse the cherry peppers with banana peppers that Subway puts on their sandwiches, or jalapeno peppers. The good way to confuse them and group them with jalapeno peppers, and not really banana peppers, but jalapeno peppers, is because they Scoville units are very close. They're about 5,000 on the Scoville unit. So this isn't all encompassing of what cherry peppers are good for. In fact, they're so useful, and they are so ubiquitous in this area of the country that you can go to any supermarket and there will be like 5 brands of them. And then if you go to the Italian specialty stores, there'll be like 20. But Cento, which is a popular brand, they don't just sell the cherry peppers whole, they sell them sliced. They also sell them as a hoagie spread for Philadelphia, because that hoagie is the name is from Philadelphia. And you put that on your hoagie or your hero if you're from New York.
I actually like using the hoagie spread because it's so much easier than having to slice up the cherry peppers, and I like to add that to pasta.
It's delicious. I recommend you get some of it. Really, really good. And I don't want to make this whole episode about cherry peppers, so I think we should probably move right into Calabrian chilies.
Yeah, let's talk about Calabrian chili peppers and Calabrian chili pepper spread, more specifically. So it seems that, as you mentioned earlier, Jim, that Calabrian chilies and Calabrian chili spread has certainly increased in popularity. You see it on more and more menus. Even, I think it's our local coffee shop here uses it on their, I think they use it on like their sweet potato toast or something like that. But they're fairly like widely available, right?
And this is a recent phenomenon. Mm-hmm. Probably really started to get popular about 5 or 6 years ago, though they've been around here for over 10 years. I remember seeing them. Never really caught on. Most of the time they would be sold dried. And then some couple companies started releasing them, and now everybody's releasing them. The dividing line, you can actually tell somebody's age often by which one they like more, if they use more cherry peppers or Calabrian peppers. Cherry peppers will be consumed and loved by pretty much people over 40, maybe 45. And then you'll see, if you go on like TikTok and stuff, you'll see a lot of 30-year-olds or younger using just almost exclusively Calabrian peppers. And a lot of them don't even know what cherry peppers are. So it's a very odd dynamic. And I would associate the Calabrian peppers, and again, I'm not talking Italy here, because this is what they eat all the time in Calabria. But here, it's definitely much more trendy and in to use Calabrian peppers than cherry peppers. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Now, they're different. Calabrian peppers are almost smoky.
Yeah.
They almost have a smoky flavor, and they're not really interchangeable. So Calabrian peppers are spicier, though they're not much spicier. You can look online and you'll find information, and they'll say they are 40,000 Scoville units. I will say I've had probably 30 brands of Calabrian peppers in my life, and I probably eaten more Calabrian peppers than most people who live in America have. And I have never experienced one that has been 40,000 Scoville. That would be the equivalent of like a bird's eye chili, which is a Thai chili, and those are hot. And I've never experienced that. In fact, often, the majority of the time, the Calabrian chilies I eat will have barely any spice at all. But listen, there's 5 varieties of them from what the research I've done. So maybe all the brands, and this wouldn't be a surprising thing, they're probably all getting the peppers from the same factory and putting their label on it. Some of the brands that are not spicy at all to me are Tutto Calabria. Have you never been spicy with them? Trader Joe's one?
La Bamba.
La Bamba sauce? Or the bomb sauce?
Hold on.
See how I come prepared for these every time. It's actually a really good deal, the Trader Joe's one, because they're a smaller jar, but they're like everything in Trader Joe's is very inexpensive.
Italian Bamba.
Bamba.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fermented crushed Calabrian chili peppers.
That one's good. I mean, it's a small bottle. It's probably only like 4 or 6 ounces. We have a lot of different brands that a lot of them are resellers. So a lot of the products that come into the port here in New York will then they'll either be labeled here when they get here, or I think they're labeled often in Italy. And then, they got to go through customs and everything. And then all these different sellers will only sell them to certain supermarkets. But if you go to a place by us here, Uncle Giuseppe's, when you bought them, they probably had, 20 brands of Calabrian chilies when you got them that time?
They have a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's when we just got a whole bunch of them. But then like individual brands, every brand is pretty much making them now because they're popular. The only brand that's been spicy for me is, do you know, Tara? Which has been the only spicy one?
Cento.
Yeah, very spicy, right?
Cento is spicy, yes.
I don't even know if they're all Calabrian chili in there. Mm-hmm. I think they're putting cayenne pepper or something in it. because it's so much spicier than all the other brands. And do this, do it yourself. Buy a few bottles and test them out. Depending on where you live, you might have to order them from Amazon, but Amazon has about 15 or 20 brands also. So, have at it. And they last a long time because you're not going to put a lot on your dishes. Like cherry peppers, you tend to go through a lot quicker, right, Tara?
Yeah, for sure.
What would you do with Calabrian? Like what versus you can't do with cherry peppers? I mean, do you agree with what I'm saying, how they're not?
I do. So the way that I use the Calabrian chili paste is if I make an egg sandwich for breakfast, I will put the Calabrian chili paste on it. I wouldn't put the hoagie spread or the cherry peppers on an egg sandwich unless it was a pepper and egg sandwich. That's a little bit different. That's how I use it. We use it in the Assassin's pasta.
So Assassin's pasta is from Bari, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where it hails from. That was a recipe that was found in crumbled up paper in the back of a cabinet in a restaurant saying how to make this odd fried spicy spaghetti dish with like a tomato liquid, basically a very watered down tomatoey broth. Mm-hmm. And you're in a cast iron pan. And the legend goes in Bari, they would just wipe up after each time they would make it to order, they would just wipe the cast iron pan with newspaper, never washing it. Anyway, Calabrian chilies are also good in, I would say, like a cream sauce. But I've used them in a bunch of recipes. I think I did a spicy sausage ragu that I put them in. Really, where they excel is if you watch me or you watch other cooking shows, you'll often see somebody taking some hot red pepper flakes and putting it in the oil, after they fry their garlic for like 20 seconds at the end. That's the time you could throw a little bit of Calabrian paste in there, and versus you wouldn't really do that with cherry peppers, because cherry peppers, the vinegariness of them, it will really change the flavor of the dish.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I think we should go right into the next one.
So up next, I've got sun-dried items, sun-dried tomatoes, and sun-dried peppers. Both of them.
I'm sure you, actually, I don't want to assume anything. Maybe you haven't heard of sun-dried tomatoes, but sun-dried tomatoes are a very, very popular ingredient, I would say, everywhere in America. Sun-dried peppers, on the other hand, are definitely not. And they're both done in the same way, though I don't think that most places probably aren't doing it the traditional way of using the sun, probably using like big ovens and dehydrators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sun-dried tomatoes, great on sandwiches, great on like grilled chicken sandwich. They're great. You can make a pesto out of them. You can make a tapenade. Sun-dried tomatoes are sold a lot of times in oil, and then they're also sold in no oil, where they're just like the individual tomato.
If you buy the individual sun-dried tomatoes that are dry, that are not in the oil, do you have to rehydrate them in oil before? Like, what would you do with just a dried sun-dried tomato?
They're great on sandwiches like that.
Just the dried version?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Because say you're doing like a chicken sandwich and, like a kind of like old out of style thing would be, and they used to make this at the deli I worked at all the time, would be a grilled chicken on ciabatta with fresh mozzarella, sun-dried tomatoes, and like balsamic vinegar.
That sounds good.
Maybe a few basil leaves. And it's definitely like a sign of the times, like dated.
Yeah, I feel like sun-dried tomatoes kind of remind me of like the 90s.
Yeah, very dated. But that just because something's dated doesn't mean it's good, and things go in and out of style. I don't want to go off on a tangent too much here, but we were discussing before, the use of cream in Italy was actually very popular in tons of pasta dishes in the 80s, and you can find a lot of information about this online. Basically, modern chefs now, and Italians in general, have tried to disown any cream in all their sauces. There are certain dishes that still retain it, like penne al baffo and prosciutto and peas and cream and pasta norcina, and there's others, but really they were using a lot more of it. Like penne alla vodka, which I always associated with being created in America, was actually created in Italy. So, and a lot of those dishes originated in Italy. But the saying goes now is that the cream kind of like cancels everything out. It overwhelms all the flavor. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll devote a whole episode to that and there's like a huge amount of vitriol that comes at us when we put cream in the pastas, which I suspect is from people that are under 30 years old in Italy, because they probably were born before when it actually was stopped being used. And, that's a different discussion. The actual recipes there, like anywhere else in the world, change. And everything goes through changes. And, it would have been funny to be a fly on the wall in a restaurant in the 80s in Italy and when all that was going on, and then how the cuisine just, boom, changed again. I could get behind that, that understanding why it's not that important, but not that good to use. But yeah, the same thing goes with sun-dried tomatoes. Bringing it back to sun-dried tomatoes. They were everywhere here in the 90s and early 2000s. And now, you make a dish with them and people, I don't know, kind of cliche now, maybe a little bit.
I think so.
I don't care though.
Yeah, I still like them. I think they're really good. But the thing I like more than sun-dried tomatoes are those sun-dried peppers, which I know are probably hard to find. I think there's only 1 or 2 brands that actually sells them.
We've had 2 brands. And the first brand that we had, we're not mentioning that brand because that brand annoyed us. And but the other brand is Pastine. If they have it, I would assume that Moody and all the other brands are going to be doing it too. Cento, they're probably, because they all copy each other, all these brands. They basically have a line. They all have a line of product. So they might have like 300 different jarred condiments and items, like tuna, anchovies, Calabrian chilies, cherry peppers. They have everything. They want to have artichoke hearts, capers. You know what I mean. They want to have everything, so they want to fill out their product line. And if a competitor has these delicious sun-dried peppers, then they're going to have it. Yeah. Now, Tara, what would you do with these sun-dried peppers?
So what I've done with them is I put them on sandwiches, and they make everything that much better. I didn't do when I had them, I didn't do anything other than that. Although I did eat them straight out of the jar, but I know that doesn't. That makes it not a condiment.
No, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that.
But no, I can't even remember what type of sandwich it was. Maybe it was like a prosciutto and fresh mozzarella sandwich.
I think it would be good right on bread, like with oil, like the oiliness just on bread.
It is. But that's one of my favorite condiments. Like if we were going to have guests here, I would put out a jar of those peppers with some bread and cheese and whatever else we're going to have out that day, and let people do whatever they want with them because they're versatile and they're fantastic.
They are freaking delicious. They are. My biggest complaint about them is they don't come in a big enough jar.
Yeah, they're very tiny.
Tiny jar.
They are expensive.
Yeah.
I think the last time I saw it, I think it was like around $10.
That much, huh?
Yes. And this was at a regular, I did see them at Stop and Shop, and I was like,
what it
that's
is?
Expensive.
It's probably big peppers that are, then they become so small when they're sun-dried. So that's probably what it is. It's like, it probably takes like this much amount of peppers to get into a little jar.
Yeah, but they're good. And the flavor is really, really concentrated. So they have like a rich.
And I don't know how new they are either. They're new to, to us. Right. But I will say, and I don't know if I spoke about this in the past. I had a friend, Danny, who in college, and he had a girlfriend at the time whose parents were like hardcore off the boat, and they owned like an importer company. So they had a whole line of stuff, and they were in Staten Island. So they probably sold to a lot of the Italian delis there and, the pizzerias and stuff like that, and the specialty stores. And this was back in 2000 or no, earlier, like 98. And he was giving me all these different products. And I remember there was a pepper one. Do you remember that, Tara?
No.
Oh, it was like this pepper, but it was like peppers in oil or something. And I was, this is like when I was like really getting into really learning what I like. And obviously you like this stuff here a lot if you're listening to me babble about it the whole time. It was like life-changing, those peppers. And then Danny broke up with her, and I couldn't get him anymore. And it was like before the internet and stuff.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I think her name was Valentina.
Yeah, but maybe you should mention people's names.
Well, I'm not talking bad about the company. Valentina, if you're listening to this, reach out to me and send me more of those peppers.
So up next, store-bought condiment. You already mentioned it, balsamic vinegar. And I would add to that any of its derivatives, like a balsamic glaze.
Balsamic vinegar, the thing that is probably the most trendy of all things in America specifically. Comes from Modena, Italy. Modena, Italy. Thank you, Tara.
I learned that from Mario Batali.
Okay, yeah, you learn everything from Mario Batali. You learned a lot of things to do in life from Mario Batali, and some things you shouldn't do. You know
what not to do. We learned to.
But yeah, like as far as balsamic vinegar goes, it was a very niche thing even in Italy. Then it exploded, and there's a ton of articles about this online. How they would export it here, counterfeit. Because, you know, if you're doing a 100-year balsamic and you're selling it to everybody, how much 100-year balsamic do you have? Same thing goes for, you know, this happens probably with scotch and, you know, bourbon, anything that is a long time. Because once it's gone, and then you don't have another 100-year one. But anyway, most of the balsamic vinegar that people in America think about is not the 100-year stuff and isn't the very ultra aged stuff or anything like that. They think of more of the balsamic vinegar that you would use on like a salad.
Right.
Now, Mario taught me, and I'm sure taught Tara, that in Italy, they will put it on Parmesan cheese.
Yes, it gets drizzled on, although I think it's definitely a more expensive, older balsamic vinegar. And when I've seen it, it's been like very thick, almost syrupy.
Syrupy, expensive, and then they will put it on berries too, I believe, or ice cream.
Yes. So I don't know if you remember this, but a few times I had made
ice cream, gelato.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this. A few times I had made a balsamic reduction and put it on top of strawberries and vanilla ice cream.
Delicious.
It is really good.
There's actually a balsamic place local to us here. Is that place still around, or did they go out of business?
Are you talking about...
There's a vinegar place near here.
Oh, yeah, that's...
You were like buying balsamic vinegars from them. They had like this place, which is local. They have all different types. So they have like a fig balsamic, and they have a white balsamic, and a big variation in prices.
The Crushed Olive is the name of it. They're in Stony Brook Village, but they have other locations.
Okay, so then they sell olive oils too, like... Yeah.
Yes. So that's olive oils and vinegars. And yes, their fig balsamic vinegar is the one that I was always getting. But they have other ones too. They have a blueberry balsamic, a chocolate balsamic.
Yeah.
Like anything you can think of. And then they have all the white balsamics too, like peach, elderflower, like all different flavors. And they're all really good.
Yeah, I mean, balsamic is great. I don't use it particularly very much at all for cooking. Yeah, you will notice probably some other channels you watch that do similar content to us, they might be dumping the balsamic in like their bolognese or something like that. That's something I never do. It's something I probably never will do. But I do like it on salad, and what I really like are the glazes that are sold now in Trader Joe's, and Costco has one. Because if you try to make a glaze yourself, you need a lot of balsamic, and then it really gets cost prohibitive almost. And often these glazes are so much cheaper, and they already did all the work for you.
Yeah. The Trader Joe's glaze is good. I don't know. It's probably not like...
No, it's not. There's nothing high end about it.
It's not.
This isn't. If you want ultra high end, this isn't the right channel for you. You know that if you're watching here. We care about really good food. We care about family. We care about making the best stuff we can, but we are not going to be showing you like shaving gold leaf on top of a 90-day dry aged steak. That is not the type of stuff that we do here. And furthermore, I don't like any of that type of content, so I will never do that, even if I win the lotto, you know?
So speaking of the balsamic glaze, the taste tester, James, went through a period of time where he didn't want to buy lunch, and he wanted me to make him this like special sandwich. So I made it, I don't know, every day probably for 2 weeks, and then he got tired of it and moved on to something else. But it was boar's head Black Forest ham, sliced fresh mozzarella, which I got the pre-sliced one. If you want to make things easier for yourself,
definitely
get the pre-sliced. Yeah. Roasted red peppers.
Oh yeah, roasted red peppers perfectly complement balsamic vinegar and mozzarella.
And then I had to put the balsamic glaze on it, and I was putting it on, I think it was like a ciabatta roll that I put it on a few times, and he loved it. That was the sandwich for those 2 weeks.
That's the bakery that I worked at. They were a bakery too, and the deli. So they had ciabatta rolls. That's where they would put the sandwich on. We're not getting into today, as Tara's talking about this, red wine vinegar is far more useful and to my kitchen than balsamic vinegar is. I use that far more. Don't need to go into that because just buy whatever is affordable to you. There's not like really good aged red wine vinegars. We're not talking about Jardiniere, which we will do a recipe, and that recipe has to come up soon before we do the Italian beef sandwich, which is a Chicago thing. So that one I really want to do a good job on. But yeah, the Jardiniere has to come first. Just like when I do pastina in brodo, I got to do the brodo first,
I think it's so weird how it's pronounced Jardiniere.
I hope I'm saying it right.
No, you are. Or at least you're saying it the way people here in the U.S. say it.
In Italy, I believe it would be Jardiniere, but I don't even think they have a word. That's not even a word. And things are often made up here. Another Chicago dish that's a uniquely Chicago thing that has nothing to do with Italy is chicken Vesuvio. Vesuvio, if you recall, was the name of the chef in Sopranos.
No.
Or was
not the name of
Vesuvio's?
the chef.
Vesuvio's was the restaurant.
Yes, it was his restaurant. His name was Artie Bucco.
Artie Bucco owned Vesuvio's, excuse me. He always got the bad end of the stick in that show, I always felt bad for him.
Yeah, I know.
People are like, oh, I would love to have people like that eating at my restaurant. No, you wouldn't. That'd be the worst thing ever.
Let's move on to some of the fancier homemade condiments. The first one I have on the list is Gremolata.
Gremolata. Okay, so Tara, do you know what Gremolata is used for?
I believe it's mainly used on top of ossobuco. Is that right?
Why is it used, though? What's the purpose of it?
Okay, so it's got parsley and orange. Is that mainly what it is?
Normally,
parsley and orange?
I mean, there's variations, but parsley, lemon.
So it's like, all right, so it's like a
zest.
citrus parsley.
Yeah.
And I believe it's served
And
with
garlic.
fattier food because it helps kind of cut the fat.
And it brightens it because ossobuco has no greenery on it. There's no herbs. So instead of just throwing shaved parsley on your ossobuco, which is totally fine to do, you put a little bit of Gremolata on there.
Okay.
I personally like to serve the Gremolata on the side because some people won't like it. And you could do the Gremolata with lemon, orange zest, grapefruit zest. You can, you want to go easy with the grapefruit or the orange because they could be a little bit more bitter. But I put a little oil in mine too. I put a little bit of garlic, or a lot if you like a lot. And I also like a couple anchovies in there.
Other than ossobuco, what else would you serve it with?
Lamb shanks would be good.
Okay.
But poposo, I have a feeling that green sauce that people, not green sauce, but the green herbs that they're talking about with people who've been to Florence, it's probably a Gremolata that's put on top of it too. Because a Gremolata would make sense. Ossobuco is a northern dish, okay? So, as is poposo. So, it's probably a lot of those like braised meat stuff that gets to Gremolata.
Okay. Next, I have pesto. It's more of the preparation of the way you'd prepare something, right? So it's derived from the verb pestare, which means, I think, to pound,
yes.
Right? Like mortar and pestle.
Yeah.
So there's all different types of pesto. We have the Genovese, which is with the basil and pine nuts. We've got artichoke pesto, sun-dried tomato pesto, walnut pesto. These don't just need to be mixed with pasta as a sauce. They can all be used as condiments. So how would you serve these different condiments?
No, you're right. That's how I would. I mean, you could put them out with crackers. Like a regular basil pesto would be good on like that chicken sandwich that we were talking about. Delicious. Or if you do a nice pizza, say you do like a grandma pizza and you bring it out of the oven, drizzle the pesto on top of it. It would be great. There's a lot of easy things to do with pesto. And pesto, I'm just talking about pesto Genovese, the basil pesto, the one that you're probably thinking about. You can just freeze it in ice cube trays, then you can bag those ice cubes, put them in a Ziploc bag, pull it out when you need it, just let it sit at room temperature for a couple hours, it'll get right back. And yeah, I mean, really simple and really potent after it sits there for a while.
Yeah, I love it on a sandwich.
Yeah.
It's great,
Pistachio.
especially with fresh mozzarella.
Pistachio pesto, great on a sandwich too.
Yes, with mortadella.
Yeah, mortadella and like on focaccia.
Yes. Yep. And we don't have a pistachio pesto recipe. We need to get that one up. Next on the homemade condiment list is salsa verde.
Salsa Verde is a little different than a Gremolata. In a Gremolata, think of it as more of not too wet, kind of like spoon
It's more chunky.
Chunky, like chopped. And a Salsa Verde you can do in a food processor, or you can use a mortar and pestle, but it's definitely smoother. And for my Salsa Verde, I use parsley, olive oil, lemon juice, anchovies, capers, and hot red pepper flakes, and then salt. And I just keep seasoning it until it's ultra potent and delicious. And that Salsa Verde can be used on grilled chicken, grilled steak, seafood. It's great on. So there's a lot of things you can do with it.
Yeah.
And like all cultures have something like this, Argentine, Spanish, like I'm thinking of like what, is it mariscata, the Spanish dish
That's a seafood dish,
seafood,
I think.
and it's all green sauce. So it's, it's all very similar and fresh. Fresh is the word from the parsley.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move into the listener questions. I have from Christine. Christine is wondering if she's been using her porcelain lemon lime handheld juicer wrong her whole life. She says, I always put the half lemon round side down into the cup portion of the juicer and then squeeze it that way. Works fine. But she's always like having to deal with lemon seeds. So she said she was watching someone on a video and they put the lemon round side up and then squished it. She tried it. It contained all the seeds, but she found it to be much harder to squeeze that way. So how do you use yours? Can you give her some tips? I think you yourself said you were using it the wrong way. What is the right way?
So Christine, the way you're describing, the way you use it is the way I've been using it, which apparently is wrong. And I'm not apparently, it's definitely wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because anytime I do anything wrong on my channel of almost 700,000 subs now, I get so many people letting me know. And some of them let me know in a very nice way. And some of them don't, okay? And some of them really don't. And those are the people that end up, the comment doesn't even come up, they tell me to kill myself and whatnot. I'm not kidding. And something as silly as that, there's probably about 1,000 people that let me know that I did it the wrong way. So I know it is a little harder to squeeze, like you're saying, because it's almost unorthodox. You're like, well, the round, you would think the outside of the lemon, the round part would go right into the cup there. It doesn't. It's
Yeah. So the round side goes up.
Yes.
Okay. And the flat side goes into the divot.
What's weird about it is, so the round side is up like that half of the lemon, so flat side down into the cup, it's weird to begin with. But then when you're squeezing it, it's one round side hitting the other round side.
Yeah.
So it's like it almost wants to slip away.
Yeah.
You know what? There's an easy solution here. Don't use that squeezer at all and just use the one that Tara loves.
I don't ever use that handheld thing. I hate it. I use the one that it kind of has like the citrus juicer, looks like a...
It's like the one your mom had from a Tupperware sale-a-thon from the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, and it screws into the jar on the bottom, and you just do it and you squeeze it.
Yeah. Remember those Tupperware parties that people used to have?
Yeah, I forgot about those.
Yeah. They were for women. Men were not allowed. Things were very sexist back then.
Yeah, my mom had a few Tupperware parties, and there were no men.
Like, we're letting Bob come today.
Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah,
Bob is not allowed.
They don't do anything like that anymore. My mom used to have a Christmas around the world party every year too. It was like you just got Christmas stuff.
You know why people don't do anything like that anymore? Why do you think?
Because they're busy looking at their phones.
Exactly. Yeah. It's social media. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, for making the world a better place. All right.
All right. So on to the next one. This is from Frank. Frank wants to know, after all the cooking that happens, I'm assuming for when we make videos, who does the dishes and cleans up?
So Frank, Tara helps me a ton. Now, it wasn't always like that. Tara, prior to her coming in full time with me, Tara had a full-time job. She worked at Charles Schwab. Tara was a big shot at Charles Schwab. And
I was not a big shot.
No, but she wasn't a lowly person. You had a good Tara had a great job. She's so modest.
Yeah, but okay.
But no, she didn't have the bandwidth to help me back then. The way now it's a 50-50 equal effort from the both of us now. But what I will do, and I'll say, is sometimes Tara will have to take the kids out or whatnot, and I can't let the dishes fill up. We always film 2 videos in one day. So filming day is typically 5 to 9 hours, depending on the recipes. I always try to do one easier recipe, and easier doesn't mean difficulty, because nothing's difficult for me to cook. And you'll feel this, you'll realize this the more you learn to cook. Nothing will be difficult for you as you become more experienced. What I mean by difficulty is how long the dish is going to take. So I'm going to film beef bourguignon on Wednesday. That is not a quick recipe. There's no way to make it quick. Even if you were to use an Instapot, which would be a terrible thing to do, because beef bourguignon depends on different sears on each step of it. But even if you were to do that and throw it in the pot, it still would take a fairly long amount of time. So I need to balance that one out with a really easy recipe. But beef bourguignon is going to use a lot of dishes. There's going to be a lot of prep. I have to wash as I'm going.
The reason also that I'm doing most of the cleanup after we film a video is because it's very important for Jim to take the video cards and bring them up to the office and get them on the computer and make sure that everything that was just filmed is actually there.
Not to get too much in the weeds, but it's called ingesting. So now if you're on a Hollywood set, if you're on a professional set, there will be so many people involved in this process. There will be assistant editors. There will be someone who's just basically an assistant. He or she makes sure the footage is okay. So I need to do that right away. I film with cameras that all have backup cards. So they all have 2 SD cards per camera. So I take one card up. If God forbid anything ever happened, knock on wood, I would go down and get the other one. But each video is roughly 200 gigabytes of data. If you don't know what a gigabyte is, basically just the footage I take for the videos is more than your whole entire iPhone holds. So, and that's just one video, because it's 2 different cameras, sometimes 3. It's a process, and it's just Tara and myself. There's nobody else involved with this. Someday there might be a videographer. You call them a videographer or a producer or somebody who wears a bunch of hats, and that might be a person that we would like to bring in, probably as a full-time position, and that would allow us to make more stuff. But yeah, no, it's Tara needs to be there helping me, because it doesn't end for me right when a lot of people aren't aware of this. My parents still don't know what I'm doing. They have no clue, because I think it's the age thing. They think that when I film stuff, that the polished video comes out of the camera, and they don't understand, and it's like cute, but they don't get that there's a whole lot more to it. Like the real fun or work starts after the video's filmed.
Yeah, I've had people ask me, or not ask me, but they've watched a YouTube video that came out on a Thursday, and they're like, "Oh, I saw what you ate for dinner last night. It was pasta e ceci."
Yeah.
And I was like, that wasn't filmed last night.
If it was that easy, I would put a video out for you every day. I would love to do that.
Final question, and this is a fun one because it's a kiss, marry, kill. So
yes,
if you have more questions and if you have more kiss, marry, kill ideas, please send them our way.
Maybe we'll just do this every week.
Send them to podcast@sipandfeast.com. This one comes from Mary. It's kiss, marry, or kill. These are your options. Dried parsley. Reddit commenters who know it all. Too many onions in the sauce.
Okay.
Which do you kiss? Which do you marry? Which do you kill?
Kill all the Reddit commenters. I'm telling you, there's a lot of good information on Reddit, but there is an epidemic of know-it-alls on that platform. It is horrible. And most people on that platform are under 30, which causes more know-it-allness. I used to suffer from massive know-it-allness when I was that age too. And as I get older, I'm approaching 45, I realize I don't know much of anything, okay? This is what happens. The more you actually know, and this is academic studies support this, the more you know about something, the less you are to speak confidently about it. It's a scary thing when a 22-year-old thinks he has the knowledge of somebody like Chef Jean-Pierre, who we were talking about last episode. I mean, you don't. You just don't. It doesn't even matter if you were cooking from when you came out of the womb. Yeah, so that's a kill. And what were the other two?
Dried parsley or too many onions in the sauce.
Kiss, marry, or kill.
Well, you're killing the Reddit people.
Yeah.
So who are you kissing and who are you marrying?
So many onions in the sauce is fine. That's a marry. And then, well, which is the best, kiss or marry?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think marry means the best. So kiss would be dry basil. Look,
Not dry basil.
No, dry. Thank God it's not dried basil. That would be a lot tougher.
No, you did dried basil already in the other one.
It would be a lot tougher. Listen, dried parsley is not bad. It just has no flavor anymore. It's basically just like dried green leaves that have no flavor. Now, where it's actually useful is say you're doing chicken cutlets. Because if you use a lot of wet parsley in it, it's going to, everything's going to start clumping a lot. So you'll often notice, like when you buy commercial breadcrumbs, that's where the dried parsley is always in. So it's not going to do anything to your dish. It's not going to improve your dish either.
It's neutral.
It's a complete neutral. It is a waste, and it's just not going to do much. I maybe there's a possibility you could reconstitute like a massive bottle of it. Possibly. I doubt it.
That's it.
This was a great one. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, podcast@sipandfeast.com. We'll see you next time.